that sort of interpersonal intimacy in a way to be able to then help that performer communicate what they are performing to the recorded medium. And, you can just say like, here, put the mic facing you and like do your thing and like, I'll make it work. Right? We do that all the time. But the real sort of, I think we would lose something if we always had to be remote, at least in terms of sound quality and also the ability to try certain things, that require that face-to-face interaction. Yeah.
Wow. That's so true. By the way, this is going to be the episode. We're in it, right?
Cool.
Like, is that cool?
Sounds good.
'Cause I feel like this is already such a great conversation. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I feel like there's a time and place for everything. I feel like both of those things have their place. On the one hand, like I feel like moving forward in this industry, like artists are going to be producers.
Yeah.
There's still going to be engineers who like, whether they're mixing, mastering, or like helping people produce, or I don't know what the industry is really going to be, but I feel like on some level, all artists are going to at some level produce themselves.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there is that space where like you need like an artist just to be free and like have someone else do the capture and like have that magic. And there's a time and place for both of those things,
And a lot of that is genre dependent because I've done a lot of work in jazz and classical. And increasingly, people in the jazz world are doing more and more home recording, and they're finding ways of collaborating with their band members. And they're doing what is actually very common in the pop world, right? Where people will work kind of on their own, or they'll kind of do track by track work. But a lot of instrumentalists who are like virtuoso instrumentalists, they kind of are that way because they've had their life focused so maniacally oriented towards the mastery of that instrument, right?
Right.
And that's really how I would think of myself too. My instrument just happens to have knobs and buttons instead of strings or, drum heads, right? But there's a need for certain kinds of recording, certain kinds of genres where you really do need that separation. And I think that's particularly in acoustic music, particularly where there's less historical intersection of those roles. So in pop and electronic music, the artist is the producer in many cases, right? And that is very different. But at least for instrumental stuff, I feel like we do need to we still have a role as engineers in that discrete and defined role.
Yeah, I actually saw, and that's making me think. I saw a video on your website where you recorded one of the guys from Snarky Puppy.
Yeah,
which like maybe like so that sounded amazing, and like that, like that kind of music. Like you can't do that kind of music without like a band in a room. I feel like there's no way.
Definitely no, and so much of what that music is about is that interaction between the players. And, we can try to like do live video links, separate. You could have everybody in a separate fishbowl in the studio, right? And you could have, low latency video cues between, which is very common in Broadway, by the way, where you have like a pit orchestra and then you have players kind of scattered around the theater. They do that already. They've been doing that for
cool.
a long time, but there's something missing in the feel, in the touch, when you see that drummer looking at the bass player, and that they're just locked in, and there's that extra, there's the other wavelength of communication going on.
Yeah, as a bass player, I can definitely attest to that.
Yeah.
Being next to the drummer and just feeling the kick more than even, you know what I mean, like beyond just hearing it.
Yeah.
You just know what the drummer's going to do because you're right there next to him.
Yeah, I mean, those are some of the most fun sessions to engineer because you spend a lot of time setting the mics up, getting the sounds right. You really take your time in sound check, and then you hit record and you let her rip, and you just like sitting back and you're basking in the glory of what's going down.
Right? You get to actually enjoy the performance.
Yeah,
and be like, hell yeah, I made it sound this good, even though like they're making it sound that good, but like
you're helping it along.
Yeah, you're facilitating.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite words to use, by the way, facilitating, because a lot of people say, well, what does an audio engineer do? What does a producer do? To me, when I'm working with an artist, probably the first job I have actually is to try to understand who is this person and what are they here for? Like, right? Like, what am I going to help? How am I going to help them accomplish their goal, communicate their music, and sort of find a way of making the technology transparent, or at least if they're interested in interacting with the technology, assisting them, facilitating them in that way. And so I see that a big part of my role is really as like that communicator. I'm a communicator of the concept in the artist or in the producer to the recorded medium. I help it get onto the recorded medium in more of a fashion that suits their creativity.
Yeah, I love that. Wait, so tell me a little bit more about your story. So like you are interested in music, you're interested in MIDI, blows your mind.
Yeah.
Like, let's go back a little bit. How do you end up opening a studio, in Manhattan?
Sure. So when I was fresh out of IAR, Institute of Audio Research, I had made a bunch of friends in the program, and we were all, audio nerds of different kinds. And we were just hanging out. Like at that point I had sort of a home studio set up, and I'd invite my friends over to come and play on the studio. Like it probably is similar. Audio people share an enthusiasm for audio, so we would listen to music and we'd try to make beats or whatever. And it was kind of through those early, really friend relationships with other creative, musicians and other creative people in audio that we started recording stuff. And when you kind of know other people who are interested in music and recording, and you demonstrate that you seem to be pretty good at it, and you kind of understand how to use the software, you're actually able to record the take, and it's not, you not delete something. They're like, oh wow, this guy, he can make it happen. So people start to kind of reach out to you through this network of people and I started recording a lot of rappers in New York, hip hop, rap, huge parts of the New York music scene. And I grew up like going to record stores and like checking out, like I loved underground hip hop. I was going to Fat Beats on 6th Avenue, buying vinyl. And so I was very much like into doing hip hop, recording, mixing, some beat making. That was like a big part of my kind of musical inspiration too. Like all those records were great, a lot of fun. So basically started working with local rappers. They would come over to my house and I just record them. And it kind of, like realized like, oh wow, like I can kind of do this. Like people want this. They want to come over. They want to record. And for the first, year or two, it was pretty casual and it wasn't really making any money. And most of the work that I was doing that was actually like paying something was for that professor. And that was a whole other kind of animal of work. He was kind of like a megalomaniac. Like he couldn't really turn down a job. He wanted to dominate the world of audio, and he happened to have like a very esteemed and established career as an engineer. His name is Bernard Fox. He was a staff engineer at the Fania record label, and he did a lot of Latin jazz recording. And he was a really great guy. He kind of like would launch you into a very difficult task, but if he kind of believed in you, he would just say like, here, go record this orchestra on a rooftop in Midtown for this corporate party. Like you'll figure it out. And so I got those kinds of opportunities because he was too busy doing other things. And he gave me the keys to his studio, which was basically like a studio apartment full of gear. And he kind of had a few early jobs, and he kind of gave me those opportunities to kind of get my feet wet. And so it's part of that diverse experience that kind of helped me build my skills, build my courage a little bit too, which is I think a big thing for people who are just getting started. It's like, how do you represent yourself as like a person in business to other people, right? And having those early experiences and those early confidence boosters helped me think like, wow, like I am in business. Like I should be in business and I should charge people for this, right? So the bedroom studio kind of expanded. I found a space in the basement of the building in which I lived, which happens to actually be the current location of Precision Sound. And I made an arrangement to get access to sort of basically like maybe like a 90 square feet space that I set up a little workstation and control room, and I started having people come in to record. And over the years, that kind of grew a little bit, but it was not really enough. So around 2007, I was sort of looking for some more work, and I made a connection with David Chesky of Chesky Records, which is a long-time audiophile jazz, classical, and world music record label. And David was looking for an assistant to help run their sessions, which are all remote recording. So that was really the beginning of a kind of long-term relationship with Chesky Records, where I assisted on their sessions. I would do all the logistics for them. I would load out the equipment. I'd set up the equipment. We exclusively recorded in churches or other kind of big live spaces.
Cool.
And we did a lot of that for a few years. And I was kind of doing a few sessions a week with them, and sort of between those few sessions a week with them and, mixing and matching a few projects at the home studio, the basement studio, it kind of became enough work to really become, worthwhile. And over that period of time, my relationships with musicians and with other producers and other engineers kind of grew and grew and grew. And eventually there was sort of a critical mass to make it worth expanding the space, which took place in, I guess it was 2012. I expanded the space that I was working in this basement space. And I was able to really kind of set up a live room and a control room. And that really became like the beginning of the studio as like the full-time, this is what I'm doing, this really is viable. And then it was really just the task of like making a website, like becoming a available for hire kind of engineer in a more public way. And I think that's really important for people is you have to just put yourself in business, like make the website, go to Squarespace, make the website.
Yeah. Likewise. Yeah.
Because no one's going to know about you otherwise. And, people don't read credits. So that's hard. It's hard to get business just from credits these days. So you have to be searchable. You have to exist. And, that was in 2012 when I had a space that I felt like I could really operate within. That was really when I really pushed trying to grow the business of the studio. And kind of, the rest is somewhat history, but hopefully that kind of gives a little background.
Yeah. It's cool that you were able to open a studio in New York when all the other studios were like kind of probably, jumping ship.
Yeah, well, a lot of it has to do with the location that I'm in. It's a funky basement. Like there's not much going on down here otherwise. And if I was trying to be in like a sort of high-end commercial building in Midtown where a lot of studios have been, it would have been unsustainable. And so I kind of lucked out with the space that actually was available.
That's awesome. Did you have like a actual moment where you're like, oh, this is actually working, like an aha moment?
Yeah, I would say probably when I had an opportunity probably in 2007, right on the sort of beginning, the tail end of working for Bernard and the beginning of working for the Chesky Records company. I was engaged by an orchestra, the Philharmonic Orchestra of the Americas, which is a really amazing classical ensemble that plays music principally from American and South American composers. And I was engaged by them to do a recording at Lincoln Center Rose Hall in the Time Warner Building. And I was engaged to produce the recording and also mix the performance, like the live sound mix. And I had only had this opportunity because I had done a couple live recordings for them previously. And when they kind of called me and were like, do you want to record us at Lincoln Center? I was like, of course, yes.
Yeah.
Like, definitely. And it was just a completely fluky, random opportunity. Like, if it was just because I happened to have had some exposure to them earlier that they knew about me and they were like, yeah, he did a good job. He didn't mess it up the last time. Like, we'll give him a shot again. And so it was, sitting behind the console at Jazz at Lincoln Center in Rose Hall, which is a beautiful hall on 60th Street, and sort of looking at a stage with an orchestra on it and thinking like, I could really mess this up right now. Like I could really make this a problem, like with the 1,000 people in the audience. And I was thinking, wow, this is like really great. Like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to do big stuff. I want to record. I want to mix. Like, and it's like, I can do this. Another one of those confidence boosting moments.
Yeah, it's like an affirmation. Like, this is people hired me to do this. This is what I could do.
Yeah,
like, and I want to do this.
Yeah.
But that's the one at Columbus Circle?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. There's several there's several venues in that building.
Right.
There's the Allen Room.
I've been to Avery Fisher Hall a bunch of times.
Yes, that's like the other.
Yeah.
That's another one of the halls at Lincoln Center proper on 65th Street.
Right. Yeah, it's so cool that you have all this experience